Okay, so you briefly watched a little lecture about Albany and the failures of the Albany movement. King is now looking around for what to do next. There's been a failure in Albany. The police department would not react. They wouldn't try to arrest the protesters. Well, they tried to arrest the protesters, but send them out. There's not a level of violence. I'm going to turn the line off. There's not a level of violence reaction from the police department. So King didn't know what to do. He decides rather fatefully to go to Birmingham. He has avoided Birmingham. Birmingham is dangerous. You watched a lecture last on just how dangerous a place Birmingham, Alabama was, especially if you were an African American who's speaking out for civil rights. Fred Shuttlesworth, who in this picture is on the left, excuse me, Fred Shuttlesworth had asked King to come to Birmingham many times. At the time King goes to Birmingham, it is 1963. It is the spring. They're getting really started in April '63. And the decision is made that they're going to boycott downtown department stores. One of the failures King says that was caused by Albany, or one of the things that King feels caused the failure of the Albany movement, was just protesting segregation in general. They weren't laser focused on one thing, trying to win concessions about one thing. And so he strongly believes that they need to kind of focus on one thing. And that's what Shuttlesworth has going on. They're protesting the downtown department stores. Now, in Birmingham back then, you went downtown to shop. The Pizzitz Food Hall used to be a department store. The McWayne Science Center used to be a department store. So that area downtown where those buildings are, that was where you went downstairs to shop. There's no mall, no Galleria, no Brookwood, no Century Plaza, which I don't even know if y'all know what that is. You went downtown to shop. And Easter's coming, and African American families are going downtown to shop for new clothes to wear to church on Easter. But if you were an African American mom and you took your kids shopping with you, you would be allowed to spend your money in the store. You might face racism as far as being watched extra, people thinking you're going to shoplift something or steal it. But so that's not great. But those stores are happy to take your money. What they aren't happy for you to do is to use the bathroom or to use the water fountain. Because African Americans weren't allowed in the bathrooms, it was not uncommon to see, young African American mothers with their kids in the street going to the bathroom in the alley. If you've ever gone shopping with a kid, it takes all of about 7.2 seconds from walking in the front door of the department store, and they got to go to the bathroom. So, if you were black, you couldn't have your kid go to the bathroom. You had to go outside, go in the alley, which of course would be humiliating. So there also are no African American sales clerks. So that's the argument. That's the thing that they're protesting for: access to the facilities in the department stores, access to be able to have jobs in the department stores. So they're protesting, they're marching. The reason in this picture that they're wearing plain work clothes, dungarees they would call them back then, work clothes, denim shirts, denim pants, is because they all make an agreement. The African Americans, the people involved in the movement, they're not wearing new clothes to church. They're wearing work clothes to church on Sunday. And so King is, they're protesting. Adults are getting arrested. They're getting sent to jail and not knowing what to do. The numbers of people involved in the protests are dwindling, and not knowing what to do, King decides he's going to march. He gets up, walks out the door, and begins to march. And he leads a march downtown, and he is arrested. He is put in jail. While in jail, he writes a letter. While he's in jail, an editorial had appeared to the Birmingham News. Nine prominent Protestant, nine prominent Christian clergy, and the rabbi of one of the prominent Jewish synagogues in town, and basically saying that the king was an outside agitator. He was stirring trouble up. He needed to leave and go home. That if African Americans would just be patient, just wait a little while and be patient, change would come. King's response is called "Letter from a Birmingham Jail," which is this eloquent, forceful um, argument for the existence of the civil rights movement. King says that in the letter that when white America says wait, wait means never. These changes are not coming. We have been waiting since 1865, and they have not happened. And so, because of that, they Black Americans feel like they have to fight for this. King intends to stay in jail. As a matter of fact, there's a legitimate fear for his life. They're afraid that something unfortunate accident is going to happen to King, but it doesn't. And and someone anonymously pays his bill, and he is released, his bail, and he's bailed out. So, not knowing what to do, the decision continues to work toward the use of children. The Children's Crusade is kind of a sub part of this. Children are used, and we're going to listen to a thing about the guy who calls all the children out to go to work. The first day that there are children, the word goes out on the radio from a couple of DJs, and they go down to the 16th Street Baptist Church. They rally up. They get up and leave school. It's like 95% absenteeism from school. And they go down, they gather up, and they begin to march. And they're leaving the 16th Street Baptist Church, which you are probably kind of familiar with, Kelly Ingram Park, and try to get downtown to that central business district area. So they're going to march several blocks. And the police stop them. They're arresting them. And, of course, all these school kids, they got nothing to do. What do you do with all these kids? How do you get all these kids? How do you get them to jail? They use school buses, right? So this bizarre thing, the kids are arrested, put on the school bus, and taken to jail. And they're skipping school. They use Legion Field, Rickwood Field, different places like that as auxiliary holding. There's so many students being arrested. The thing about kids is they don't have jobs to lose. They don't have to go to work. They don't have to support a family. And so you've got all kind of kids, teenagers, middle school kids, coming out and joining the march. After a couple of days, the jails fill up, and Connor decides to use fire hoses because Bull Connor is the head of the public safety department. Commissioner of Public Safety is head of the police department, fire department. He uses fire hoses, and he uses police dogs to try to disperse the crowd instead of arresting them. Another side note, an interesting thing about Birmingham this time is there's actually two elected city governments. One, the county commission that was elected in 1960, the city commission elected in 1960. There's a special election held to replace the commission with a mayor city council government. And it's and Bull Connor doesn't win that. He's voted out of office. There's a lot of people in Birmingham who were tired of him after the Freedom Rider incident, the beating at the Trailway Station. So the business community wants to get him out. So there's two legally elected governments in Birmingham, and there's a court case going on about who's really the government of Birmingham. So the truth of it is there's no control in a lot of ways. It's kind of a perfect storm in Birmingham because of this. And so when the police dogs come out, they attack the protesters, and this goes out all over the world, right? They're turning fire hoses on these kids. These images are seen all over the world, and people are like, what in the world is going on in Birmingham? The thing is, there's only really a handful of days when children are marching and protesting, and even just a couple of days that they're using the fire hoses and the police dogs, because this is everything King wants. The pictures, or the movement wants. The pictures, the nation is understandably upset. And the pressure begins to pour in. Celebrities begin to come to Birmingham to march with them. the national and international outcry is massive. Now remember, this is the Cold War. The Soviets are showing this all on the front page of their newspaper, talking about how awful America is and capitalism is. It is just brutal um, uh, treatment of these kids. These poor kids have gotten away from the main group and are just being pummeled by this fire hose, right? Of course, this famous picture, you're probably most familiar with it because you've all been down to the park next to the Civil Rights Movement, Civil Rights Institute. And the interesting thing about this is the story behind it. This picture is worth 1,000 words, and it is a perfect picture of what the movement wants, showing the brutality of this. The policeman in his sunglasses, looking menacing and mean. The dog jumping at the protester, right? This boy acting like he's or seemingly innocent, whatever. But this is the funny thing is that's not what's going on here in this picture. This kid has actually kicked the dog, which was something that all the children were told not to do. Do not antagonize the police. Do not antagonize the dog. He's not actually one of the protesters. He's a kid who'd been expelled from school for fighting and had decided he heard all the ruckus. He was going to come down and see what was going on. He'd been taunting the police and actually had just kicked the dog. If you look at his knee, you can see this in the dog's chest. And he actually punches the policeman after this. The policeman's actually trying to restrain the dog and pull him back. Now, I'm not excusing using the dogs on kids. Don't get me wrong. But my point is, we don't always see the full story. And the picture's taken on a life of its own. And the words, it's a much bigger than what really goes on here. Anyway, there's a massive protest against this. Concessions are made. The Birmingham business community is making deals or behind the backs of Bull Connor, and they finally make a deal with Shuttlesworth and the people in Birmingham. It almost goes to at the 11th hour. It almost falls apart over a misunderstanding. They agreed to desegregate their lunch counters. They agreed to desegregate the department stores. They agreed that they will hire African Americans to work in some of the department stores. And so because of that, the movement is called off. King leaves town. That night, his hotel room at the A.G. Gaston Motel is bombed. He was out of town already. His brother's house, his brother was a pastor in Birmingham. It had been bombed during the movement as well. There's a riot and a fear that George Wallace sends the state police, and there's a riot in Birmingham after the bombing. People are so upset about it, but order is eventually restored, and things change in Birmingham. Kennedy now makes a decision. The next time there's a racial incident, he decides, I'm going to ask for the passage of a civil rights bill, and we'll see that in the next lecture.